You are going to sleep tonight on one side or the other, left or right. A decision you make unconsciously, the way you have made it every night for decades. The side you choose determines the direction gravity pulls on the acid in your stomach, the blood returning to your heart, the lymph draining from your tissues, and the cerebrospinal fluid clearing waste from your brain for the next 8 hours. Gravity does not pause while you sleep. It acts on every fluid in your body, in whichever direction you are oriented, continuously, until morning. Direction matters. And the physics of why begins with the fact that your body is not symmetrical on the inside. Heart sits left of center. Your stomach curves to the left, with its greater curvature forming a natural reservoir on the left side. Your aorta descends along the left of the spine. Your inferior vena cava, the large vein returning blood from the lower body to the heart, runs along the right. The thoracic duct, the largest vessel in your lymphatic system, drains into the left subclavian vein. None of these arrangements are accidental. They are the products of embryological development that positions every major organ and vessel asymmetrically. And that asymmetry means your body has a preferred gravitational orientation during the hours when you are horizontal and unconscious. Most people have never thought about this. When you choose a sleeping position, you choose based on comfort. Which shoulder feels better against the mattress? Which hip takes the weight more easily? Which direction you habitually face? The internal anatomy is invisible to you, but it is not invisible to gravity. Gravity acts on the acid in your stomach, the blood in your veins, the lymph in your ducts, and the cerebrospinal fluid in your brain according to the direction those structures are oriented. And the direction changes completely when you roll from one side to the other. Start with the organ you will feel first if the orientation is wrong, because nighttime reflux is a gravitational problem, and the physics is specific. Your stomach is not a symmetrical sac. It is a J-shaped organ with the esophageal inlet at the top and the pyloric outlet at the bottom right. Greater curvature, the larger outer curve of the J, extends to the left. Fundus, the dome-shaped upper portion, sits above and to the left of the esophageal junction and acts as a gas reservoir, collecting swallowed air during meals. When you lie on your left side, the greater curvature hangs downward by gravity. Gastric contents: acid, partially digested food, digestive enzymes, pool in the dependent greater curvature, below the level of the esophageal junction. The fundus sits above the gastric pool, holding gas above liquid the way a bottle held with its neck upward keeps the air at the top. The pyloric outlet is positioned above the level of the gastric pool, and gastric emptying proceeds by gravity-assisted flow. When you roll to your right side, the anatomy inverts. Greater curvature faces upward. Gastric contents pool against the gastroesophageal junction, the very point where the esophagus meets the stomach. The fundus, now positioned below the esophageal inlet, pushes gas and acid toward the lower esophageal sphincter. The sphincter must resist both the hydrostatic pressure of gastric contents pressing against it and the gas pressure from the compressed fundus below. Think about what that means for the person who ate dinner 2 hours before bed. The stomach still contains acid and partially digested food. If they lie on their right side, gravity pulls that mixture directly against the junction the sphincter is trying to keep sealed. If they lie on their left side, gravity pulls it away. Stomach is identical. Acid is identical. Sphincter is identical. Different gravitational vector, different outcome. Corey and colleagues, publishing in the American Journal of Gastroenterology, measured this directly using ambulatory pH monitoring. Right-side sleeping was associated with significantly more gastroesophageal reflux episodes than left-side sleeping. Acid exposure time in the distal esophagus was roughly 50% higher during right-side sleeping compared to left-side sleeping. The difference was entirely gravitational. No medication changed, no diet changed, no surgery performed. The only variable was which side of the body faced the mattress. And here is what the sphincter itself is doing during those hours. Because the lower esophageal sphincter was designed for specific pressure geometry, and sleep position changes that geometry. Lower esophageal sphincter is not a simple ring of muscle. It is a high-pressure zone approximately 3 to 4 centimeters long. maintained by tonic contraction of smooth muscle in the distal esophagus, reinforced by the crural diaphragm, the muscular sling of the diaphragm through which the esophagus passes. Resting pressure of the sphincter is approximately 15 to 30 millimeters of mercury above intragastric pressure. That pressure differential is what prevents the retrograde flow of acid into the esophagus. Sphincter was designed to resist pressure from below, from the stomach pushing upward against gravity in an upright person. That is the geometry it evolved for. Food and acid pushing up, sphincter holding down, gravity assisting the seal. Every time you stand upright, gravity is helping the sphincter do its job, pulling gastric contents downward, away from the junction, while the sphincter holds the line from above. In right, lateral, and supine positions, the hydrostatic geometry changes. Gastric contents sit at the level of the sphincter or above it. Pressure differential across the junction is reduced or reversed. Transient sphincter relaxations, which occur normally during sleep as part of the digestive cycle, are more likely to result in reflux because the contents are already pressing against the junction when the sphincter briefly opens. In left lateral position, gastric contents sit below the sphincter. Pressure differential is maintained. Transient relaxations occur into a dry junction rather than a flooded one. The sphincter opens briefly, as it does throughout the night, and closes again. But there is no acid waiting at the junction to escape through the opening. The anatomy has moved the acid away from the door before the door opens. The difference between waking at 2 in the morning with burning in the chest and sleeping through the night without interruption may be, for the person whose sphincter is marginally competent, whose acid production is normal, whose medication is controlling the chemistry, but not the physics. The difference between right lateral and left lateral position. The acid did not change. The sphincter did not change. The gravitational vector changed. And the vector determined whether acid reached the esophagus or stayed in the stomach where it belongs. If you experience nighttime reflux, the burning that wakes you at 2 in the morning, the bitter taste on waking, the chronic cough that no medication fully resolves, the acid is not the problem. The physics is the problem. The physics is the problem. Gravity is pulling gastric contents toward a sphincter that was designed to hold against downward pressure, not lateral or upward pressure. Left side sleeping restores the pressure geometry the sphincter was built to operate under. Medication you take for reflux reduces the concentration of the acid. It does not change where the acid goes. A proton pump inhibitor makes the gastric contents less acidic, but the contents still pull against the esophageal junction when you lie on your right side. Less acidic fluid pressing against the sphincter for 8 hours still produces irritation, still triggers the cough reflex, still causes the microaspiration that produces the morning hoarseness many reflux patients report. Left side sleeping addresses the vector, not the chemistry. The medication addresses the chemistry, not the vector. The two are complementary, but the position change alone, in the Curie data, reduced acid exposure by 50% without any change in medication. Consider the person taking medication for reflux and still waking with symptoms, still experiencing the cough, the hoarseness, the residual burning. The medication may be working as designed while the physics is working against it. The chemistry is controlled, the gravity is not. The question is not whether the medication is strong enough. The question is which side of the body the treated acid is pulling against for 8 hours. Well, and the gastric anatomy is only the first asymmetry that sleep position loads. Because your cardiovascular system has an equivalent problem, and the physics operates through a different vessel on the opposite side of the spine. Inferior vena cava, the large vein returning blood from your lower body to the right atrium of your heart, runs along the right side of the vertebral column. When you lie on your right side, your body weight compresses the IVC against the spine, partially obstructing venous return. Blood returning from your legs, your kidneys, your liver, all of it passes through a vessel that is being compressed by the weight of your abdominal contents pressing it against the vertebral column. The obstruction is not complete. It is partial. A narrowing of the vessel diameter that reduces flow rate the way stepping on a garden hose reduces water flow without stopping it entirely. When you lie on your left side, the IVC is unloaded. Gravity pulls the abdominal contents away from the vein rather than onto it. Venous return improves. More blood reaches the right atrium per cardiac cycle. Your heart receives a fuller preload and pumps more efficiently against lower resistance. The difference between the two positions is the difference between a pump receiving its designed input volume and a pump working against a partially crimped supply line. Same pump, same demand, different supply. Difference may not be conscious. You do not feel your IVC being compressed, but the cardiovascular system registers compression through the baroreceptor reflex. When stroke volume drops, heart rate increases to compensate. In pregnancy, where IVC compression is dramatic, the heart rate response is directly measured. In non-pregnant adults, the compression is smaller and the heart rate response has not been directly measured in sleep position studies, but the baroreceptor mechanism is identical. Your heart in right lateral sleeping is likely working marginally harder, not because of disease, not because of fitness, but because the plumbing is being compressed by the weight of the body it serves. You see, the difference in cardiac preload between left and right lateral positions has been measured most dramatically in pregnancy studies, where the enlarged uterus makes IVC compression severe enough to cause maternal hypotension in the supine position. But the physics applies to every body. The IVC runs along the right side of the spine in every human. Body weight compresses it in every right lateral position. The compression is smaller in a non-pregnant adult, but it is present, it is measurable, and it operates for 8 hours every night. Consider what that means. Your heart works slightly harder when you sleep on your right side, not because the heart is different, but because the vein feeding it is being compressed by the weight of your own body against the spine. 8 hours of marginally reduced venous return every night across years and decades is a cumulative hemodynamic load that left side sleeping removes. The heart that receives full preload all night long operates at a lower heart rate with better stroke volume, using less energy to move equivalent blood volume. The heart that works against partial IVC compression operates at a higher rate with reduced efficiency, consuming more oxygen to achieve equivalent cardiac output. The difference on any single night is clinically insignificant. Accumulated across years of nights, it is a workload your heart performed that it did not need to. And then, the system most people have never heard of that depends on gravity more than any other, because the lymphatic system has an asymmetry so profound that sleep position changes where 75% of your body's lymphatic drainage converges. Lymphatic system, the network of vessels that collects interstitial fluid, filters it through lymph nodes, and returns it to the bloodstream, has a structural asymmetry that is rarely discussed outside of anatomy courses. The thoracic duct, the largest lymphatic vessel in your body, collecting lymph from the entire lower body and the left upper body, empties into the venous system at a single point, the junction of the left internal jugular vein and the left subclavian vein. 1 point, left side. Approximately 75% of your body's lymphatic drainage converges there. Lymphatic vessels have thin walls and operate at low pressure. Unlike the cardiovascular system, which has the heart as a central pump generating the pressure that moves blood, the lymphatic system has no central pump. It relies on external forces to move fluid, skeletal muscle contraction, squeezing the vessels during movement, respiratory pressure changes from breathing, and gravity. During sleep, when your muscles are largely inactive and your breathing is shallow and regular, gravity becomes the dominant driver of lymph flow. The direction gravity pulls determines whether lymph moves toward the drainage point or away from it. Left side sleeping positions the thoracic duct's drainage point at a lower gravitational potential than much of the lymphatic network it serves, facilitating flow from the right side of the body and the lower limbs toward the drainage point on the left. Right side sleeping positions the drainage point higher than much of the network, requiring lymph to flow uphill against gravity through thin-walled, low-pressure vessels with no pump to drive it. Morning puffiness, puffy hands, swollen ankles, a sense of fluid retention that resolves within an hour of being upright, may be a sign of impeded overnight lymphatic drainage. The puffiness is interstitial fluid that the lymphatic system should have collected and returned to the bloodstream during the night. In the upright position, gravity assists drainage from the extremities toward the thoracic duct. In left lateral sleep, gravity assists drainage toward the duct's terminus. In right lateral sleep, gravity impedes it. The morning puffiness that resolves once you stand is the gravitational correction, the fluid finally draining once the body is oriented in a direction the lymphatic system can work with. Lymphatic system's role in immune surveillance. Filtering pathogens through lymph nodes, presenting antigens to lymphocytes, clearing cellular debris from tissues, means that overnight lymphatic drainage efficiency directly affects immune function during the period when your body does its most intensive repair and immune maintenance. Position that optimizes this drainage for 75% of the lymphatic network is left lateral. Position that impedes it is right lateral. The difference is gravitational, 9.8 meters per second squared, acting on fluid in thin-walled tubes for 8 hours. Your immune system does not know which side you're sleeping on, but the fluid that feeds it, the lymph-carrying antigens to lymph nodes, carrying immune cells to infection sites, carrying debris away from healing tissue, flows faster or slower depending on whether gravity assists or resists the drainage pathway. The side you choose determines the throughput of the system that maintains your immune surveillance while you are unconscious. That asymmetry, 75% of the body's lymphatic drainage converging at a single point on the left side, with gravity as the primary driver during sleep, is the fact I cannot set aside in the sleep position literature, because it means every night you spend on your right side, gravity is working against a drainage system that clears your tissues and maintains your immune surveillance. Not dramatically, not dangerously, but consistently for hours in the wrong direction. The lymphatic system was not designed with sleep position in mind, but sleep position determines whether gravity assists or resists its primary drainage pathway. And then, the brain's waste clearance system. Because what was discovered in 2012 changed the understanding of what sleep actually does, and the efficiency of the clearance depends on position. Brain's dedicated waste clearance pathway, cerebrospinal fluid flowing along perivascular channels surrounding arteries entering the brain, collecting metabolic waste including amyloid beta and tau protein, draining along perivenous channels, was discovered in 2012 by Macon Nedergaard's group at the University of Rochester. System operates primarily during sleep, when the interstitial space in the brain expands by approximately 60%, reducing resistance to fluid flow. During waking hours, the lymphatic system runs at a fraction of its sleeping capacity. Your brain waits for sleep to clear the metabolic waste that accumulated during the day, and the efficiency of that clearance depends on the angle at which the drainage pathways are oriented relative to gravity. Implications for the person over 65 are direct. Amyloid beta, the protein whose accumulation is associated with Alzheimer's disease, is cleared from the brain primarily during sleep, through the glymphatic pathway. The rate of that clearance is a fluid dynamics problem. Fluid flows faster through tubes when gravity assists rather than resists the flow direction. Sleep position determines whether gravity assists or resists the drainage angle. Every night you sleep, the lymphatic system is running, clearing the amyloid beta and tau that accumulated during the day, flushing the metabolic waste products of 16 hours of neural activity. The angle at which that flushing occurs, determined by your sleep position, changes the throughput of the system. The connection between sleep position and amyloid clearance rate is not established at the level of human clinical data, but the gravitational physics of fluid flowing through tubes at different angles is not controversial. It is plumbing. Lee and colleagues published in the Journal of Neuroscience in 2015 that lymphatic transport in rodents was most efficient in the lateral sleeping position compared to supine or prone. Lateral position produced the fastest clearance of amyloid beta tracer from the brain interstitium. Lee's data established lateral over supine or prone. It did not distinguish left lateral from right lateral. The study measured position category, not side specificity. Anatomical argument for left lateral specifically is an inference from jugular vein asymmetry, not a measured finding. Jugular veins are not symmetrical in most people. The right internal jugular is typically dominant, carrying approximately 60 to 70% of cerebral venous drainage. In left lateral sleeping, the dominant right jugular vein is positioned uppermost, and the gravitational drainage angle would be optimized for flow into the superior vena cava. The logic is anatomically sound. The direct measurement, left lateral versus right lateral lymphatic clearance rate, has not been performed. Research is in rodents. The direct human measurement of lymphatic clearance rate by sleep position has not yet been performed. The rodent data is the best available. The mechanism is plausible. The rodent data supports lateral over supine, and the anatomical argument for left lateral specifically is consistent with the jugular asymmetry, but it remains an extrapolation, not a confirmed finding. Well, and the heart itself has a positional preference, because it is not centered in the chest, and the way it hangs within its membrane changes with your orientation. Heart sits in the left hemithorax, suspended within the pericardium, with its apex pointing toward the left anterolateral chest wall. In left lateral sleeping, the heart rests against the chest wall, with gravity assisting its natural position. The apex settles toward the chest wall. The valves align with their design geometry. The great vessels maintain their normal angles. In right lateral sleeping, the heart hangs from its great vessel attachments, the aorta, pulmonary arteries, and venae cavae, and swings rightward within the pericardium. This produces a slight mediastinal shift that alters the geometry of the tricuspid and mitral valves. For most healthy adults, this shift is clinically insignificant. The heart accommodates positional changes without measurable dysfunction. For adults with enlarged hearts, pericardial effusion, or existing valvular disease, conditions whose prevalence increases substantially after 65, the gravitational loading of the heart in right lateral position may produce measurable changes in cardiac output and valve competency. If you have noticed that sleeping on your right side produces palpitations, a sense of the heart beating irregularly, or nocturnal breathlessness that does not occur on the left side, gravitational shift in cardiac geometry is a plausible explanation. The mechanism is anatomically sound, gravity does alter annular geometry, and the effect would be larger in hearts with age-related dilation. But the direct measurement of positional valve competency during sleep has not been performed. The connection is mechanistically coherent. It is not yet a confirmed clinical finding. Think about what the convergence means. Every system described here, gastric reflux, inferior vena cava compression, lymphatic drainage, lymphatic waste clearance, cardiac pericardial geometry, each with its own anatomy, its own fluid dynamics, its own evidence base, all favoring left lateral sleep position through one mechanism, gravity acting on fluid and tissue in asymmetric structures. The convergence is not designed. It is the consequence of a body whose internal organs are asymmetrically arranged, lying horizontal in a gravitational field that does not turn off during sleep. No physician has ever asked you which side you sleep on. No health assessment includes sleep position as a variable. No prescription for reflux medication comes with a note about gravitational vector. The side you choose every night, a decision you make unconsciously, maintain unconsciously, and have never been told matters, determines the gravitational vector applied to every one of these systems for 8 hours. The reflux that wakes you, the morning puffiness that resolves by noon, the cardiac efficiency during the hours your body repairs itself, the rate at which your brain clears the metabolic waste of the day, all of these are influenced by which side of the body faces the mattress. The variable has been there every night of your life. It was never measured because nobody thought to ask. No single system makes the case alone. The reflux data is the strongest. Corey's 50% reduction in acid exposure is measured directly in humans with ambulatory pH monitoring. If you experience nighttime reflux, the left side evidence is clinical grade. The IVC compression is established physics, confirmed in pregnancy studies, and applicable to all bodies. The magnitude in non-pregnant adults is smaller, but the mechanism is identical. The lymphatic drainage is anatomically sound. The thoracic duct terminus is on the left. Gravity assists drainage in left lateral position. Though no study has measured overnight lymphatic flow rate by sleep position in humans, the direction is certain. The magnitude is unmeasured. The glymphatic data is the most preliminary. rodent data supporting lateral over supine, with anatomical reasoning but not direct measurement supporting left over right specifically. The cardiac geometry is mechanistically plausible but unmeasured during sleep. Multiple systems at multiple levels of evidence, all pointing in one direction. The direction is left. Person who sleeps on their right side tonight is not in danger. They are not making an error that will produce immediate consequences. They are choosing a gravitational orientation that works against these systems for 8 hours. Modestly, not dramatically, but consistently, night after night. The person who sleeps on their left side is choosing the orientation that works with them. The difference on any single night is marginal. The difference across years of nights, consistently, in one direction or the other, is a cumulative variable that no longitudinal study has measured, but that the physics makes directional. Now, the practical question. Because knowing the physics changes nothing if the body cannot adopt a position, and habitual sleep position is one of the most deeply consolidated motor patterns in the human body. You have been sleeping in a preferred position for decades. The motor patterns that maintain that position during sleep operate below conscious awareness. You roll, adjust, and resettle without waking, guided by a motor program your nervous system consolidated years ago. Transitioning to left-side sleeping requires working with the unconscious motor system rather than against it. Studies of sleep position retraining typically use physical barriers, body pillows behind the back, mild inclines favoring the target position, that the sleeping brain encounters and respects without waking. The barriers are not permanent. They are training aids for the unconscious motor system, providing a boundary that prevents the habitual roll to the non-target side. First nights feel unfamiliar. Your body is accustomed to a different pressure distribution, different shoulder loading, different hip alignment. The unfamiliarity is not a sign that the position is wrong. It is the motor system encountering a configuration it has not maintained overnight in decades. For the person over 65 with left shoulder pain or left hip discomfort, common concerns that make left side sleeping initially uncomfortable. Studies note that a pillow between the knees reduces hip adductor strain and aligns the pelvis, and support under the rib cage reduces shoulder compression. The skeletal discomfort is a joint loading problem solvable with support placement rather than position abandonment. The goal is not to endure discomfort. It is to distribute load so the skeletal system accommodates the new position as comfortably as it accommodates the one it has used for decades. Adaptation periods of 2 to 4 weeks are consistently reported. After that, the new position feels natural. The unconscious motor system incorporates it. The props become optional. Your body has learned a new default. That convergence. Every system in the body that depends on fluid moving through asymmetric tubes, each with independent anatomy and independent evidence, all aligning with left lateral positioning through a single gravitational mechanism, is what made the sleep position research irreversible for me once I saw it. Because it means the side you sleep on is not a preference. It is a physics variable that determines the direction of gravitational force on every fluid system in your body for a third of your life. Your body sleeps for approximately 1/3 of its existence. During those hours, gravity does not stop. It acts on gastric contents, on venous return, on lymphatic flow, on cerebrospinal fluid, on the heart itself, continuously for 8 hours in whichever direction you are oriented. Left side sleeping aligns gravity with your body's internal asymmetries. Tonight you will choose a side, unconsciously, habitually, based on comfort rather than anatomy. But now you know what the choice determines. Left lateral sleeping is not a wellness trend. It is the gravitational orientation that matches the internal architecture of a body whose organs are not symmetrical and whose fluid systems depend on direction. The physics operates whether you know about it or not. Now you know. The direction matters.